Hi, welcome to Connections. I'm Stacey Levine-Lavely, and today I have a very special guest who is going to be helping me create more unity in the community like we like to do every time we meet. This woman is absolutely amazing. She was, believe it or not, a camp counselor of mine way back in the day, so we go way, way back. And Jo Werther is an MSW, LCSW, and she is a licensed therapist. She has a popular podcast, and she is a creator of the new Plan A, her unique method for restoring emotional well-being, especially in challenging times. And for those of you who are watching it right now, COVID has certainly thrown us all a curveball. And if you're watching it later, this is historical. So definitely check this episode out. Her podcast is called Get Back in the Game, Recover from Emotional Devastation with the New Plan A. It can be heard on Spotify, Google Play, and iTunes. And we will be leaving that in the YouTube underneath here. So please check that out. If you're watching this, it'll be coming up on your screen at different points. So you'll know where to tune in, or you can always email us. Jo's inspiration for the new Plan A has become one of its most well-known taglines. And a lot of you will know part of this, at least. The woulda, coulda, shoulda, train stops here, which I love. It's so true and it's so real. And you don't know what you don't know until you don't know you know it. And that's so important. It's engaging, intuitive. She's a compassionate teacher. She's committing to helping people to get off that train and onto the path that leads to a life of serenity, inner peace, and emotional well-being. She has 25 years experience as a clinical social worker and mindfulness-based practitioner within hospice care, inpatient and outpatient mental health and substance abuse treatment. And she has a private practice and she's going to be doing some coaching. So I can't wait to really jump into all this with her. She and I, like I said, we go way, way back. When I was in camp, I went to an overnight camp in Pembroke, and she was one of my counselors. And through the years, people like her have really helped form the basis of who I am today, what I'm doing today, what my journey is. Little did I know back then that I was going to have a child with special needs. Jagger's amazing, but there are definitely times where it's really challenging, and there are hurdles that I never thought I would actually have to jump over as I've gone down the path. I mean, once you get the diagnosis, you think, oh, that's the worst it could possibly be. And then there are other hurdles as you're going along, whether it's getting services, seeing things that other kids are already achieving, that your child may or may not ever get there, things like that. So we're going to be talking and really deep diving into that today. But I just want to thank her so much, because not only is she my guest today, but she's been one of the people, rather should I say, that's created the foundation that I've been able to build to create, the values I have today, the way I want to help people, the way I want to step up and show who I am. And I am just so grateful to her. So all further ado, the lovely Miss Jo Werther, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm so happy to be here with you, Stacey.
Me too. I'm so excited to jump in with this. Jo and I, we were friends on Facebook and everything. We did a lot of, camp talk. And then one day we both got an email that a very, very close friend of ours had passed away. And it was right as Jagger's video had broken, which for those of you who watch the show a lot, you know that he has 10 million views. He's like, rock star on the internet. And that's what started our foundation and ultimately led to this TV show. That being said, my co-partners at that time with the foundation went on a radio show, and I got to go to the celebration of life for this lady. Her name is Karen Jacobs. She's wonderful. And her sister, Lisa, who's a very good friend of both mine and Jo's. They just mean the world to us. And so we sat down after the funeral and everything at the Shiva, and we chatted a while, and, we talked, and, we had a few conversations here and there. And I loved what she was doing. I personally had read the whole, I'd done the different podcasts and things like that, and learned so much from it. And it had me Really, really happy and elated that I had gone from a couple months before sitting on the couch in a ball, just so stressed out, not knowing what to do, thinking my kid was never going to affect anything in the world. He may never have a job, blah, 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 blah. I was there. And after meeting her again, after all those years because of him, and then going through what she's going to talk about today, I'm in such a better place. And I just want to thank you so much, Joan. I want to jump right into, could you tell us a little bit about the new Plan A?
I can. As I said to you before we started, poke me anywhere, and this comes kind of pouring out. Interestingly, the new Plan A has sort of morphed, sort of organically and naturally since then. How many years ago was that?
Almost 5.
Almost 5.
2016.
So, yeah. So I think it had been a few years prior to that I had sort of put the new Plan A together and named it. And I'll tell you why I named it the new Plan A. I was going through some stuff really different than your path, but devastating losses and changes and sort of deconstruction of life as I knew it, kind of free fall kind of thing. And a friend of mine once said to me around that time, she said something about nobody wants Plan B. Who wants Plan B? So we thought we need a new Plan A. And so, the idea being that Plan B can only ever be a runner-up to what you really want. So my work was about really getting behind body, mind, spirit, the kind of is of what is, and going forward from there. So the foundation, really the cornerstone of the new Plan A is acceptance, which can make people yawn or want to throw tomatoes or kind of tune out. So my focus in the new Plan A is showing people the how. What does it actually look like when you put this in practice in your life? Because we've all probably read self-help books or listened to podcasts or blogs or, and it's all good. But it doesn't really stick to your ribs until it gets sort of out of your conceptual mind and into your visceral body. So that was what it felt like a calling, especially where the intersection of my own kind of hard stuff that led me to it. And I was also working with a lot of people who were suffering, people who had survived suicide attempts, and not so happy maybe that they did survive, but really looking at, okay, now what? So that was sort of the beginning of the new Plan A. And from then, and so I wrote a book, which is not published, but the manuscript is sort of ready. It's in the pipeline. I launched the podcast, which is what you and I talked about that day at Shiva. I created a 12-week web-based course, which I got out there in social media, like I digitally put it out there. So anyway, that's kind of what I was doing for those years and since, and in between, betwixt and between, as they say, I would jump into what I call a W-2 job, health insurance and a steady paycheck, so I did some hospice work and other things, and I've had a private practice for 15, 20 years. So anyway, most recently, and I think you and I don't know if we talked about this the other day, but I put together a program I call the 4 Ps of Inner Peace. And it's part and parcel of the new Plan A, but it's really the same. It's like a different portal into the same practice of a deep and complete and radical acceptance being sort of like the basis of peace, because that kind of acceptance is really non-negotiable. It really is not conditional upon whatever's going on outside of us, which is how most of us rise and fall with how we feel, which is totally human and natural. And it's possible to cultivate this other thing, which makes us rise and fall less with each up and down that life delivers. So how's that for a long run-on sentence?
I like it. I like it. No, it's very important, and I love how you said with the plan A, like the new plan A, because like you said, nobody wants to have a plan B, and it's just so important to not just. And I think a lot of us fall into this category where we're always listening to podcasts, and a lot of us for like bettering ourselves, self growth, or what have you. But it's just we listen, we listen, we listen, we listen, we listen, we learn, we learn, we learn, we learn, we learn, but we don't implement. And I think the fact that yours turns that corner and allows people to get into the implementation stage with that real plan together, that's the most important thing, because you can listen until the cows come home, but if you're not bringing it into your life, you're not going to change your life.
What I always tell people is if it was really a matter of reading the manual, we'd all be fine, right? We read it, we get it. What's that?
Or if we got the manual.
You know, it's like you have to know the how you put it into practice. And so if talking about, you know, that kind of deep, complete, radical acceptance is uninspiring for people to hear, or even just confusing, like another conceptual thing, but like, what does that actually mean? What I teach people in the ways that I work with them, whether it's a coaching program or individually, or you know, running a group or whatever it might be. It's about simple practices, Stacey, that are short and simple, truly brief, and repetitive. Meaning, it's, as I said to you on the phone, your viewers, your people might, well, everybody heard you say how we know each other. When we talked the other night, it was so nice and it was so easy. It's kind of like what we're doing now, except that we're sort of being recorded, but we both fell into the deep channel of what it means to talk about what's real.
Yes.
And so I think that's another sort of cornerstone of all of this, like the realness, the reality, the truth that people are living, and learning how to live with whatever's true for us, with more peace, more ease, even when it is impossibly difficult. So it sounds contradictory, it sounds paradoxical. And I think when people are doing inner work on this level, it is about entering that paradox. I can't survive this, but I can and I am. I can't cope with this, but I can and I do. How's that even possible?
Exactly.
So I help, right? You know, so, but to kind of, I call it, you know, less wear and tear on the body, mind, and spirit. It doesn't always have to be as hard. And sometimes it just is. And so then we need to go through those moments the easiest or most easily that we can. It's like accepting the times when things are impossibly difficult and we cannot change them right away. But balancing that with the knowledge that things are always changing and the next moment is always coming. And B, not every moment is as hard as every other moment. And so if we can get in the flow, we actually experience more ease. Here's an example. There's it's a tool really, and a lot of different theoretical frameworks offer something like this. How I do it with people, excuse me, it's a kind of you can call it a diary sort of card, or I don't have a good word for it actually. Call it a diary card. And you just take a piece of paper and you know, make a grid, lines across, lines down. But the gist is that you have time, but, you know, by the hour or even by 15 minutes, 5 minutes, doesn't matter. And then in the other, if that goes down the, you know, vertically, then across the top, you list feeling words that are common to you, whether it's, you know, overwhelmed or relieved, or, and it has to be the range. It can't be all awful feelings, because then you wouldn't be showing yourself any variation, which is the point of this thing. So what you do is you pull the thing out every however often you decide to, 5 minutes, 15, an hour, and you give yourself a rating. And you might say, you know, when you can't take a shower for 5 days, how could you possibly do this? And I'm not even recommending this per se, but as an example, right. What it shows people is when they look back at it, 2 o'clock really wasn't the same as 9 o'clock. You know, I actually had a happy feeling at 3:15. And the reason this is important is because when we feel overwhelmed and awful, that is kind of like the bucket of paint that is thrown at the wall. It's really all that we can see or remember. If you say to me, how are you? I said, yesterday was a really rotten day. But if I had done what I just said, I might have been able to say to you, my old friend Stacey called me and we had like an amazing conversation. So you string those little moments together like pearls on a necklace. And before you know it, there's some jewels there. It's not just one long, endless stretch of difficulty. Did any of that make any sense?
It really did, because it resonated with me because of the saying, and I'm probably not going to get it correct, but that's okay. It's the life is made up of moments, but your moments defined by the moments to take your breath away. And those are the kind of things that it's similar in that aspect, that you may have very mundane, whether it's mundane or boring or just like you said, completely down in the dumps. And you have those moments that are just kind of those jewels in the crown, so to speak, that kind of pull you back, and they're what you kind of live for. And, in this particular, our audience, a lot of them have kids with, who are on, like, say, the autism spectrum or something like that. And they do ABA therapy, which is really doing a lot of tasks and getting rewarded at the end. And that's almost what that kind of is like, is to be able to know that I have to do this, 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 and this to get to this. And it's similar, but not the same. But again, it gives you those moments you work for that make it worthwhile, make the journey worthwhile.
Yeah. And I think the other thing I want to add, and please help me know if this is clear, because I think this is really important, Stacey. The more present we are. And what that means, again, that is not some spiritually abstract and esoteric concept, which it seems like in a lot of the things that we all read and are drawn to and listen to people speak. And it's very inspiring. But then when you're done listening, you're kind of like, oh, I feel it, but I don't know how to, but sort of dissipates, right?
Yeah. You don't know how to apply it to your life.
Exactly. And what I'm talking about is helping people learn how to not just apply it, as we're saying, but, well, it is about applying it. And the how is by cultivating a certain ability to be present. And I mean present, I mean 5 senses. I mean like feet on the floor, hot, cold, itchy head, thirsty, like viscerally embodied in the moment, with the awareness that the next moment will come and the previous moment already went by. Because emotionally, what we tend to do, and this is natural, this is neurological, it's like it's normal, which is not a word I ever use. I can't believe I said that. It's natural. What's natural is for difficult emotion to project itself into infinity. Like it sticks longer. It goes further. We tend to think, not only is it raining on my day off, but it's always raining. It always rains on my day off. It's, like Pigpen in the Peanuts, the guy who's always raining on him. So here's the thing I was thinking about. Tell me if this is off the topic or not. After we spoke and you shared, can I share about the shower?
Absolutely.
So one of the things that Stacey shared with me was, a period of time and years, maybe, when you couldn't even get in the shower, like for days, because you didn't have the space and the safety for Jagger to leave him long enough to take a shower. So you and I were talking about relaxation or self-care as things like go to the spa, go have a mani-pedi, go away for the weekend and do whatever. And we talked about, well, that's just not an option for a lot of people at the moment. 2 of my favorite words, and I teach this when I talked before about simple, brief, repetitive practices. Here's an example, because it's not like complicated. Whenever you make a statement, especially one that's emotionally kind of loaded in a hard way, but any statement really, put the words right now on the end. Put the ends right now, put the words right now on the end, because that brings it into the temporal framework that's sort of, in front of you, as opposed to what emotion tends to want to do, which is carry you away with just the before, during, and after, and all there ever was this, and this is all there will ever be, which is the perfect seed of overwhelm and misery. And am I making sense?
Yeah, and it feeds that. I love what you're saying about putting the right now, because if you don't, it leaves it open-ended, I think, like you're saying, and it allows it to, almost like a snowball, it allows it to gain momentum, because the more you think about it, the more it's going to roll downhill, where when your body and your life is more elated, or you have that, like right now, you have the but I can, and you can kind of see that upward trajectory start, and you can give it momentum by, creating a more positive space and using more positive words and talking to yourself more positively, that it doesn't have to be like that. I love those two words.
Yes, so that's one thing. And the other thing, I feel like, if ever there was one thing for people to remember and connect with my name, if they think, who was that person who talked with Stacey that day? Some things really do stink. So period, short sentence, okay. So the acceptance radical, deep, complete that I teach is kind of about, well, it's not kind of, it is about acknowledging the fact that kind of acceptance, deep, complete, radical, is defined as non-judgmental, non-preferential even, which is hard to imagine. It is just an acknowledgement of the facts of anything. A person, place, a thing, a situation, as it is, and those two words at the end, right now. Because the nature of things, the nature of the universe really is to change. I mean, that's philosophy, it's psychology, it's reality, it's look at nature, look anywhere. Even if there's a kind of a deep channel of something that perseveres and seems like it's not changing, things, the next moment is always coming. It's just true. But the thing about a non-judgmental acceptance is that it liberates us from all of the emotion that comes with the judgments. Think of it as the distinction between pain and suffering. Think of it like this. Pain is just the fact of an experience. You can think of it as emotional pain or physical pain or anything. Mm-hmm. Whereas suffering is what you might think of as the commentary, how I talk to myself about my pain. I really hate this pain. This pain stinks. I'm Jo. I don't know if you know this about me. I'm a chronic migraine sufferer. I do not enjoy it, I have to say. I have a preference to not have that. But so using that as an example, when I am in the grip of migraine pain that's kind of getting up on the scale, I release any emotion about it, which may sound like I have some sort of switch and I just flip it. It's a function of having practiced, but a kind of non-resistance, Stacey, to whatever is in people's experience right now. Yeah. That non-resistance, the thing I want you to know, and the thing I want people to hear, is that kind of non-resistance, and it isn't binary, we have it, we don't, we do it, we can't. It's on a continuum to the degree that we can release or lessen our judgments and our preferences and our whatever that all is, to the degree that we can reduce, emotional well-being will increase. Like, there is a correlation that is actually neuroscience based. Like, emotional well-being, in essence, does not have to be contingent on how things are going in my life. So now let's flip it. A huge amount of validation is necessary around how hard things actually are for us. And I think one of the things you and I talked about on the phone was what I call disenfranchised loss, invisible loss, unacknowledged loss. So when people, and this is true of grief across the board of many different kinds, and certainly you and I talked about the recurring losses, every developmental milestone that your child might not meet. Comes in waves, or a new iteration and peeling the onion, a new layer of the feeling. So the validation, so the thing about the acceptance, what I really want people to understand, and I would be so happy to talk to anybody ever about this, it is I'm going like this. I got a seesaw here. It's both. It's incredible, unassailable validation of how hard it actually is, how much it actually stinks, the sorrow that you actually feel, and every other feeling under the sun. All of that validated unquestioningly. And then here's the seesaw. The other thing, the thing we balance it with. It's not one or the other, because we never want to invalidate. Sometimes people use gratitude like a baseball bat, like to invalidate how bad you feel, smack somebody upside the head, like, well, go count your blessings and shut up, Yeah, it's good to count. I mean, comparison is useful when we can get some perspective about the things that are just unbelievably we're graced with good fortune, even with the other things that are hard. So what I want people to get is that none of this acceptance stuff is ever meant to invalidate even a little bit the incredible, impossibly difficult, and pick any adjective that you want, of the reality that people are living. My thing is that all of that is true. And how can we suffer less and improve well-being even with those truths?
And I know this kind of goes back to the conversation Joe and I had on the phone. And I thought it was funny because she's been in this forever. And I just remember talking about something with Jagger, and what it was he was about 16, and we were driving through the center of town to bring him to his services after school. And all the kids were there, and they were getting all ready for the prom, and everybody had on their tuxes and their gowns. They were taking pictures. And in our town, they have a beautiful gazebo in the middle of the center. And all the kids were up there getting their pictures taken. And it was just that moment that, from the moment he was diagnosed and all these other small pieces in between, just having that gut-wrenching moment that, okay, he's not going to get that. That's not part of his life. I mean, there are so many other, as you said, beautiful blessings that have come into my life because of him, that shouldn't negate all those other good things that have happened. And that's something I think that what we're talking about now is really coming to terms with. There's going to be good, there's going to be bad. It's like, yes, you mourn your child who could have been for the child that you now have. Then you start building those skills and, be it through services, acceptance of other people, what have you, I guess reorganizing your circle, because your circle kind of falls away once your kid does something strange at a birthday party, or they can't get up the steps like the other kids do if they're in a wheelchair, whatever the situation may be. Suddenly you become very different. Those invitations stop coming, things like that. So then you go through another level of grief where, okay, now he's rejected again, but I still love him with all my heart. Next, school, okay, he can do this, but he can't do that. Is the school going to have the kind of underpinning and support that they're going to need to achieve maximum feasibility? So on and so on. It just goes down the line. The first time when you thought your kid was going to be on the Little League team, or playing football, or being on the soccer team, or being able to join band at school. Is the school going to support that? Are they going to give you a one-to-one to be able to be involved in that particular activity? I mean, this just goes on and on throughout the lifetime. And even speaking to the families who have kids who are older and who are heading into adulthood, is there going to be a group home placement that's going to comfortably fit your loved one? So it's not just the little kids, it's really a lifetime span of all this. And where does it fall? Where's the support level? And you're just going to constantly, 16 years old, is your child going to drive? If not, there you go again. 18 years old, yes, you can sign up for selective service, but are they going to be able to do other things at 18-year-olds? They're not going to be able, in some cases, to be legally emancipated, things like that. So it's just all these levels and all these hurdles, and what I call them hurdles.
You call them grief hurdles.
Yeah, and she's like, can I use that? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. But that's what it was. Yeah. And kind of coming back to where you were, you're just constantly jumping over those. And it's just really, really challenging. And that's why someone like Jo can really kind of help you. And that's what I love about our podcast, is just to have people tune in and just, as you're reaching those different levels, it's just a good eagle eye view of someone who isn't completely in the weeds with it, but can give you some overview and oversight. And then if you need to drill down in a different way with your own family and your own situation, you could reach out to someone like Jo, or if it's not, if Jo like doesn't have availability, I'm sure she can recommend someone else you can chat to that's closer by, or, whatever. But, get the help. Grief is not a good place to stay. Believe me, I can tell you, I've been there, done it, sitting on the floor with Ben and Jerry's and a spoon, and it was ugly, and it is what it is. But at the same time, I'm lucky. I have people in my life like that. And it came about by really having to say to myself, God, I have to ask for help. And God, that was the most repulsive thing to me at that time. But I've learned that by reaching out and enlisting other people in what I'm going through is what's made me stronger. It's made Jagger's life more richer and more full because I'm allowing other people in. And that was a hard piece for me.
Yeah. You made me think of 3 things. Do we have time for me to say 3 quick things?
Of course. We have plenty of time.
Awesome. Thing number 1 is, and I do love the grief hurdle. That's such a, if we think about, life as a journey or a path or whatever metaphor sort of holds the way we feel and experience the experience. I love the idea of, grief hurdles. A hurdle is something that we need to get over or past. Or here's where the metaphor is limited for me. I think more about going through. There's a saying, the only way out is through. But that saying doesn't work either, because we're not getting out of anything we're living with. So words get weird. But here's the thing. Grief hurdles, yes. 3 things I wanted to say. 1 is, it is a spiral path of living and growing and moving through our lives with these experiences. And by spiral, what I mean is we revisit. Things come around again. But the thing about a spiral as opposed to a circle, which we think of a vicious circle, which, never goes anywhere. The spiral path is unfolding and it's moving forward. And that may be an act of kind of faith and a tough sell in the hard moments. But the spiral path idea is that feelings will come around, they'll be familiar, but we have new growth from previous iterations of those struggles that we can bring to the next time it comes up. So that was one thing, which also incorporates the second thing, which is it's just another thing to be radically accepted. We do need to renegotiate the peace that we attain at various times. Like you were just saying, there are rites of passage and rituals that go with them that are just all around us. So whether it's, you see the gazebo, you see the other kids, that's a good example, or an aging rite of passage, which raises all those questions, whether it's driving or, independence, emancipation or not. Do we need guardianship? How do we do it? And then, all the questions. But so 2 more things, which makes 4, not 3, which is so me, because you know me. So one of them is, I'm gonna catch you being an example, if you'll let me. You said there are all these grief hurdles that I have to constantly jump over. No, this is me, JoJo, so you can throw your own tomato at me if you want. I would reflect back to you that your use of the word constantly comes from the emotionally sort of driven of how hard the hurdles are. But I would also reflect back to you, if I were a Martian, I call this Martian mind. If I landed from Mars 5 minutes ago and don't really know what any of this means, and I learned the definition of the word constantly, and then you used it, I would say, it doesn't look constant. Are you jumping over a grief hurdle right now? So back to that diary card thing I talked about.
Right.
It shows us that even if I said to you, yesterday just was a rotten day, if I had actually cultivated an ability to be more present moment to moment, you would see more of this. And maybe we did have a phone call or even a nice exchange, just one of those little, hi, how you doing things that, we do sometimes. So the last thing I wanted to do, in addition to right now, which believe it or not is a mindfulness practice, it may sound just like a thing or a technique, but adding the words right now onto any sentence you speak, especially when it's about something hard, is no small, I mean, there are a lot of teeth in it's powerful. So, I'm just completely overwhelmed. I feel completely overwhelmed right now. Do you feel the difference?
Yeah.
I just can't bear everything ahead. How am I going to solve all these problems? Right now, I can't bear looking ahead at all the problems I have to solve. Like right now is very powerful. The other thing, back to the thing about it would be really nice to go skiing for the weekend or go to the spa or Calgon take me away or even just take a shower.
Right.
What I wanted to and you know this because you've listened to my podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I know everybody talks about breathing, breathe, breathe, breathe. And a lot of us want to throw tomatoes about that too, because we're like, I tried breathing, it didn't work. So, what I want to say is it's not a vending machine. It's not abracadabra like Bullwinkle or pulling the lion's, remember, pulled the lion's head out of the hat.
Yep.
What it is, though, is a way to slow down our own nervous system. Because the fact of the matter is that the mind and the body are connected in the sense that what we're thinking does sort of speed up certain processes that then reinforce the thoughts, which speed up the processes. So it's kind of it's like, think of it like a text messaging loop, like it's a message back and forth. And the reason that breathing can interrupt it, and this is true even for a parent who is, like you said, sitting on the floor with Ben and Jerry's and feeling like, this is my whole world, right? And I would say right now, but anyway, no kidding. But the idea about breathe, and there's a lot of different ways to do it. A lot of people teach it differently, but most basically, we are talking about something that, again, back to me teaching how to people who want to know. I've read all the books, but like, how do you do it? Mm-hmm. What I tell people is more is better, but anything is good. You just have to do it. So we're talking about, for example, if you decided, one of the practices I teach is called Be a Balloon, and it's really just about pretending you're a balloon for like 15 seconds. Could be 30 seconds, could be 5, doesn't matter. But it's about taking in a deep breath through the nose, go as far as you can, which, as you know, when you're anxious and stressed out, sometimes you can barely even, that's okay. You go as far as you can, you stop, hold it for a second, and then let it out. Pretend you're just inflating like a balloon. Shoulders rise, chest expands, belly puffs out, and then all of that. If you do that 2 or 3 times, and during that time, you allow your mind to be only on the body breathing. So you can focus on the shoulders rising and falling, air coming and going from the nose, belly. You can put your hand on your belly. Some people put their hand on their heart when they just feel it move. But the thing is, why I'm saying this is because this is something that you can do even if you can't leave the room because your child needs constant supervision at the moment. You can barely even go pee. This is something that you can do. So there's other things that are analogous to this, but Stacey, what I want to say to you is little things with the right kind of coaching, which is, I'm not me or anybody, but little things can actually make an incredibly disproportionately huge and good difference. And that's the kind of hope that people need when they just can't see anything but what's hard. Was that clear?
Absolutely. And I agree with you on so many levels. I think that's a great tip for a lot of parents to take into meetings because they can be very hypercharged. And, at the end of the day, they're fighting for their child's life and dignity. And, I've always kind of approached it that I'm coming in with this child. I'm the general manager. Yes, we have a team here, but my voice has to be heard because at 22, all of you are going away each year. Most of you are going to be leaving the team. you're on your free agent year and you're looking around for other opportunities. And this is my kid and this is what I have. At 22, what I have is what I have. What he's learned is what he's learned. Not that he can't continue growing and learning.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah.
It's having that specialized support, because I am the absolute expert when it comes to my child. You're the absolute expert in whatever field you're in.
Right
so
on.
Let's make the two work together. Let's find a midway point where we can learn. And sometimes you do. I mean, I remember being in meetings where I've been like, and that's pretty much what I did. And, like I said, I've spoken to you, especially in the last year, because I've been going through the guardianship piece, and it's just very, very stressful. Like, I just, like, a lot of things I could have taken on myself probably, but I chose to use professionals. And sometimes I'm kind of like, I could have done this. Why didn't I? Why did I do what I'm doing and still all stressed? Like, I'm still, like, my heart is still just like constricted, and what have you. And, those are the kind of tips that is so important for people to have that mindfulness and be like, okay, I'm getting spun up, but this is something I can do, that it's not going to be too obvious, hopefully, as long as I don't close my eyes in the middle of the meeting and pretend I'm the balloon, I can keep them open.
Oh, why not? Right. But,
it helps, every little bit helps.
Absolutely. No, you're right. And what we're talking about, Stacey, is centering. And again, not like I will now move to Tibet and have my own little mountaintop where there's nothing to stimulate any difficulty. And so I just can have uninterrupted serenity and peace. Good work if you can get it, right? But most of us don't live in Tibet on a mountaintop is the thing. So the challenge is how to get some of that in the context that we actually, like, right here down and dirty on the ground, are living in. So when we talk about centering, like you said, if someone's going into a meeting, and I get it about meetings, and you keep the humanity, the integrity, the uniqueness, the heart and soul, you want it there. You just don't want that, all of that. So centering, even briefly, even like you said, taking a couple of breaths. And the thing about the breaths, I really want people to get this. If you take and it, like I said, it doesn't matter how deep it goes. What matters is that you just stop and do it. But if you don't let me say it affirmatively. What you must do is have your attention, your mind, your focus just for that moment. And when I say moment, it could be literally less than 60 seconds. But it has to be on the breath. You have, whether you focus, like I said, the shoulders, the nose, it doesn't matter. But if you're breathing, have you ever driven from point A to point B and, you drove by the Empire State Building and somebody says, hey, did you see? You're like, no, I totally didn't see it. Like you weren't kind of there. So this type of breath kind of reset, you have to have your mind for just that moment. Think about a small child with autism or with anything else. Think about a puppy. Think about something that keeps running. No, come back. No, you right here. No, right here. You good. Right here. No, sit. It's me talking to a dog, not a kid. It's me training my dog. It's like you have to train the mind to be where you tell it to be. Because again, back to the other stuff, serenity has a lot to do with managing the mind. Because when the mind is chronically, consistently overwhelmed, then what hope is there of serenity? So one part of the practice is to calm it. And so breathing does that, but the mind has to be with the breath. So you don't just sit down for 20 minutes and take on the impossible, but for 10 seconds, can you focus on your breath? Can you bring your attention back to the breath when the mind wanders, even just for 10 or 15 or 5 or 20 seconds? When I do this with people for the first time, I do it for a very short time. And I say to them, so they close their eyes, usually not a good thing to do while you're driving, but you can breathe while you're driving with your eyes open. But I always say to people, how long do you think that was? And people always guess shorter than it was. And the reason why is because once they have the tiniest bit of mastery over what the mind is doing, even just for 5 seconds, it affords many times that in relaxation and centering, which is exactly what you want to bring into a meeting when everybody's going to be talking about your kid like he's on a conveyor belt of factory, I call it, factory medicine,
Yeah.
Not that there's not a lot of wonderful people, God knows there are, but nobody has the stake in what happens at that meeting that you have.
Yeah, exactly. And that's such a huge challenge because like you said, I mean, the teachers are there, they want to do the best that they can for the kids at the end of the day. But, again, we all know, even though it's not said, that there's budgets to consider. I mean, there are many different things that are considered in the grand scheme of the whole picture. And so, like you said, you're the one you're the biggest stakeholder in the outcome, and you need to keep yourself together. And it's really hard because when you're talking, and I mean, I've advocated for people for probably the last 15 years, gone into meetings and things like that. It's somebody else's child. When I have to go in for me, it's a whole different story. So like you said, even if you can get those 15 seconds in, even if it's just while everybody's signing in, when you do a team meeting, most people on here probably know that you sign the attendance sheet and it goes around the table. Take that minute, use that minute to do this breathing technique.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, or if they're changing, everybody's flipping their pages or something, even if it's 5 or 10 seconds, hopefully you have yours already flipped and you can take that time to do something like this. Bring yourself back to center. Try to think of it as anybody else but your child. One of my big tips I always tell people is when you go in, either bring like one of those plastic, those things that you use on event tables, like with a piece of paper saying what the name of the company is. Put a picture of your kid in there. Put a picture on the plastic part of your notebook. Stand it up. Do these things that are going to help bring focus at this is your child and what
love that.
And, you might see a change of the people around the room when they're not just staring at, the IEP says blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, so this is for Jagger, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes that'll even give you that strength, like you're talking about with the mindfulness and things like that. It's like keeping what's most important top of mind. And there are different ways to do it, whether it's visually, whether it's through breathing. I'm sure you can give us some other examples, which would be great. Just to make sure that you're in that moment, you're dealing with it, you're keeping yourself as calm and relaxed and giving yourself as much as inner peace as you possibly can, because things with, and I think this is if you love anybody and you're fighting for something for them. And I hate to use the word fighting, but that's really, you're negotiating. I mean, whatever you want to say, you just want what the most positive outcome is going to be. You're taking yourself from your pain point, which is where you are right now, to what you see as, Pleasure Island or whatever you want to call it, when you put all those steps together to get your child to where, they're going to have the future that you envision. It may not have been what you thought of before the diagnosis, but, over time, you kind of get a little more comfortable with the reality of what the possibilities are without taking away the creativity. And I'm not saying to just settle for whatever, but what do you see really is happening with somebody? And what can you see? Like, for example, when my son was little, he used to love to string those wooden beads on strings. I mean, he literally would do actual like physical work for that, whether it was homework or whatever, to be able to do that. Well, if that had carried into childhood, maybe he could have worked with like bracelets, like making bracelets and having his own jewelry shop. There are all these little things that if you really look beyond the confines of the like, this is all they can do, and really kind of be creative and mindful. And I think a lot of your focus point, especially with the breathing and things like that, that's where you can dream. Like if you take that as a real time during your day, I'm assuming like maybe 5 or 10 minutes a day, really contemplate on what can this person do that you might be able to get them to that angle. Or if it's just for you, just for calming down, because you're like, oh my God, if he does that one more time, it can be used in many different
all of the above.
Right.
Everything and that's beautiful. All of the above. And the thing that you just made me think of was another important thing to say about all of which is it is expansive. If you think of the way things feel so much of the time, it's the opposite. It's constriction, consume. Remember on Batman, that shrinking room? I don't know if it was the Joker or the Penguin or somebody had like this room that was like Batman was trapped in it and it was getting smaller. Remember? I love that.
Probably the Joker.
For all the people who like didn't grow up with Batman. So, but the thing is, that feeling that the world is just getting smaller and things are getting harder, and whatever words you want to put to that. Yep. Everybody knows that feeling. This other way, by which I mean any number of mindfulness practices. If you think of mindfulness practice as an umbrella, there is just an enormous array of options under it, and many of them are simple. So whether you're in an IEP, meeting or whatever kind of, meeting it is with providers. You mentioned bringing a picture, which I think is fabulous. What an incredibly great, like a way to, there's the human being. There he is. There she is. There they are. Another thing, in addition to taking just a few centering breaths, whether it's the sign-up sheet going around or whether you pop into the bathroom before, or you can, whatever it is, another thing can be to pick an affirmation, and you can keep it in your mind silently. But an affirmation is, I'm guessing is a very short, simple declaration of something positive. It is a short sentence with a period. It is not a long paragraph of, on and on and on. It's, I competently move through the steps of this meeting. I trust myself to access the inner resources I need as they arise. Like, I'm just making them up. I could make up 1,000, but picking an affirmation is great. The other thing I thought of, there is a technique. I didn't make this up, although it's not so original, but people call it broken record. So again, for the people who don't know what records are, which I can't even imagine believing that, but there used to be a thing you put down, you put a needle, right? And if the record was broken, the needle would get to a place and just skip and it would go back before, like it kept, so the thing about the broken record technique, like, let's say you're going into a meeting, or you can even do this this is actually a behavior management technique, which you can, you probably already know this, look who I'm talking to, but broken record, basically, it doesn't mean you come on like a ton of bricks and hit someone over the head with it. It just means that you come back around to it, like what happens on a broken record, or the refrain of a song is another way to think about it. But basically, like, so you're in the meeting, it's like blah, blah, all the stuff. And you already know that you've established your kind of broken record is, my child will be receiving at least 15 hours of services, in the following way or the following, or whatever it is. But broken record, if we hold it in a centered way, helps us not get swept away in the drama of the unfolding of the meeting. And then you get out, right? Do you ever do that? You get out and you get home and you're like, oh my God, I totally forgot,
I should have said this, should have said that.
This, or, So it's another tech, but it all, again, it comes under the umbrella of being mindfully present in the right now of the moment. So a picture is good to remind us why we're here and who the human being, is, who is, broken record's good. The centering breath.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny because JoJo, I'm listening to you, and what most of you don't know, I'm going to tell a little secret, is JoJo is quite the accomplished guitarist and singer. And at camp, she used to sing Here Comes the Sun. And that was one of our all-time camp favorite songs, and like all kinds of different songs that we had at camp and things like that. So it's actually sort of funny hearing the broken record from you, because that is so appropriate, and what have you. And And, a lot of times I actually hear that song in my head when I'm kind of like at the end of my rope. And I just, and I actually hear you and like a few other people at our camp used to do this. And they kind of like all come into my head when I'm kind of like at I'm not going to take it with Twisted Sister in one vein in my head. And then I have to swap over to, but here comes the sun to kind of come. I got to get up a little bit, for that, and then kind of come back down to like, okay, it's time to go into the meeting. We have the fight, but we also need to be kind of chill and not be completely off the wall. Or, anytime you're attacking someone, it's never going to come off well. So being able to have these kind of techniques and things like that in your head and in your arsenal, and being able to do this and do it for the best of your kids, this is so huge. But I just had to point that out because as you were saying all this, it kind of all just sort of came into my head how this is sort of how I go into it. So, I mean, if it helps anybody out there, even if you're going to find that song that's going to, make it for you. All the techniques that JoJo's given us today have been phenomenal to, really get yourself grounded, get in the right place, make it mindful for your loved one, whether you're dealing with, like I said, the schools and the IEP kind of situations, ISPs afterwards when, they're in that 18 to 22 transition or the 22 plus planning. These are all such critical pieces to take away and really, hold on to be able to move forward in these different projects and things like that. So Jojo, do you have any other like closing tips for everyone you can give us that you can think of to kind of keep us in a good space mentally, and not just in meetings, but just in life in general, to, kind of hold that space, have that non-judgmental zone where, we're not picking apart other people and we're not picking apart ourselves, which I think we do the most of, just giving ourselves the grace to be able to be in the moment.
You said so many pearls of wisdom there, Stacey, and I want to kind of string them together, I guess, by way of answering your question. You just put your finger on the coals that we rake ourselves over. And I do a lot of my work is about learning how to not do that, because that's the train that doesn't go anywhere, or doesn't go anywhere good. So I would say this, I would say everybody, each one of us, all of us, find the unique sort of concoction, if you will, of all of this stuff that resonates most deeply with us. Like I could teach 10 different mindfulness breath practices, and several people might say, oh, I really like that one. That one I didn't like very much, So it all points to pearl of wisdom, number one, which is that there's no one right way. There's, many roads, one journey kind of thing. We all get there how we get there. That said, so there's a uniqueness that we get to honor. There's only one you, there's only one me, there's only one Jagger, there's only one of all of us. And we really get to find the way that is ours. So that's one thing. And then that's sort of back to this balance thing. There is a universality to the human journey, which is why we can even have conversations with anybody and connect, so there's, we relate, we connect, we empathize. There's universality to human experience and what things feel like, what it's like to struggle, what helps, and all of that. And there's the uniqueness. So don't let anybody tell you how it should be for you. That's one thing. And that's much more like this than I ever am. But I just really feel ferociously protective of people. And I know you do too. It's an advocacy thing. Nobody can tell you what you should be experiencing, you should be feeling. There's no shoulds. That's the train, the shoulda, woulda, coulda. So, okay. The other thing I was going to say is the right now, one day, at a time thing. Another one of my little techniquey things I teach people is ABC. Because ABC, we can all remember that. The acceptance, right? One breath at a time, just one breath at a time. And as we said before, I may need to renegotiate that. I may be serene for like 30 seconds. I may be serene for a fraction of a second, and then it shatters again. I need to renegotiate and bring it back. And if that's my day or my week or my month, or even my first 5 years of life with, taking care of a person who's, got a lot of needs, then we accept that. So acceptance, one breath at a time with compassion for myself and for everybody else. So ABC is another way to kind of just like, what's a quick and dirty way to remember when I'm so overwhelmed I can't remember anything.
And that's the perfect place to really be ending this, because that's what it really is about, is really the compassion for people and for yourself. So Jo, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And everyone, let's try to keep creating unity in the community. Have a great day. Bye-bye.